The river looked calm, too calm. It stretched through the night like a sheet of black glass, barely disturbed by wind or current, reflecting the fractured glow of distant stars. To most eyes, it was nothing more than water. To Captain Elena Ward, it was a warning. She stood at the edge of the embankment, boots planted firmly in damp soil, rifle resting against her shoulder. The rest of the unit had already begun tightening formation behind her. Quiet movements, controlled breathing, the familiar choreography of soldiers who trusted routine more than instinct. But Elena's attention never left the river. Something about the surface felt wrong. She had learned long ago that danger rarely announced itself loudly. It whispered. It hid in details others dismissed. And right now, the river was whispering. "Captain," a voice murmured behind her, "we're clear to move." Elena didn't respond immediately. Her eyes traced the faint reflections dancing across the water, noticing how they broke and reformed in patterns that didn't match the wind. It was subtle, so subtle that most people would never catch it. But Elena wasn't most people. She turned slightly. "Lieutenant, the water's disturbed, not natural movement." A brief pause. Then a low scoff. "You're seeing ghosts again," said Marcus Hale, the team's senior operator, loud enough for the younger men to hear. "River's dead. No heat signatures, no movement. We don't have time for intuition." A few soldiers exchanged glances. Someone smirked. Elena felt it but didn't react. She was used to it. At 32, she was the youngest captain in the unit and the quietest. She didn't command attention with volume or intimidation. She commanded it with precision, or at least she should have. Marcus took a step forward, deliberately placing himself between Elena and the river. "We proceed, now." Elena held his gaze for a moment, searching for hesitation, doubt, anything. There was none, just impatience. "Understood," she said calmly. The team advanced. Gravel crunched softly beneath their boots as they descended toward the low ground. The night air was cold, heavy with the smell of wet stone and iron. Elena moved at the rear, every sense sharpened, every instinct screaming that they were stepping into a mistake. Her eyes flicked back to the river. There. A ripple, thin, precise, moving against the current. Her pulse quickened. "Hold," she said quietly into the comms. "There's—" The shot cracked through the night. One of the men screamed as he went down, clutching his leg, blood soaking through his uniform. Chaos erupted instantly, voices overlapping, weapons swinging toward cliffs and rooftops. "Sniper!" someone shouted. "Find the angle!" Marcus barked orders, spinning in place. "High ground! Scan the ridge!" But Elena wasn't looking up. She was staring at the river. The surface had gone still again, too still. And in that stillness she saw it, a smooth patch of water where reflections vanished entirely, as if something beneath was swallowing the light. Her breath slowed. "Shooter's not elevated," she said, voice steady despite the adrenaline burning through her veins. "They're submerged, 30 meters out, drifting left." Marcus turned on her sharply. "That's impossible." Another shot tore through the air, slicing past Marcus's helmet close enough to leave a silver scar across it. Silence followed, thick, stunned, terrified silence. Elena raised her rifle. She didn't hesitate. Her shot pierced the water exactly where the surface distorted, followed instantly by a barrage from the rest of the team. The river erupted, splashes, bubbles, movement breaking the illusion. For a split second, a figure surfaced, then vanished. The firing stopped. No body, no blood, just ripples fading back into darkness. The men stood frozen, chests heaving, eyes wide. Marcus slowly turned toward Elena. This time, there was no smirk on his face, only suspicion. And as the river settled into silence once more, Elena felt something colder than fear settle in her chest. She had just saved them all. And somehow she knew that was only the beginning of her trouble. The safe house smelled like metal, dust, and old sweat. It was the kind of place meant to be temporary. Bare walls, flickering fluorescent lights, crates stacked against corners that never truly felt secure. The team crowded inside, voices sharp and restless, adrenaline still clinging to their skin like a second uniform. Elena Ward sat apart from them, perched on a wooden crate near the back wall. She cleaned her rifle slowly. Her movements were precise, almost meditative. Magazine out, chamber check, cloth through the barrel, each action steady, controlled, as if the chaos around her belonged to a different world. That calm unsettled them. Marcus Hale paced the center of the room like a caged animal, helmet tossed aside, jaw tight with barely contained anger. "I've been in combat zones for 18 years, he said loudly, "and I've never seen anyone call a shot from underwater like that." No one answered him directly, but several sets of eyes drifted toward Elena. She didn't look up. You knew, Marcus continued, stopping abruptly. You didn't guess, you didn't hesitate, you knew exactly where the shooter was. Elena slid the bolt back into place and set the rifle beside her. Only then did she meet his gaze. Because I recognized the pattern. What pattern? A younger operator asked. Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. Distorted reflections, countercurrent displacement, controlled breathing beneath the surface. Marcus let out a short laugh. Listen to that. Sounds rehearsed. Lieutenant Aaron Cole, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Enough, Marcus. She called it right. That's what matters. Marcus rounded on him. That's not all that matters. We lost Miller's mobility tonight. And whoever that shooter was, she escaped. Clean. Professional. The word she hung in the air. Elena felt it like a pressure change. Someone shifted uncomfortably. We all saw the silhouette, another voice said. Slim frame, long hair. Elena's fingers stilled for a fraction of a second. She resumed cleaning, but the pause had been noticed. Marcus's eyes narrowed. There, you reacted. I reacted to speculation, Elena replied evenly. Marcus stepped closer. You trained for this kind of thing, didn't you? Elena straightened, meeting him without flinching. I trained to protect my team. That's not what I asked. Before she could answer, the door creaked open. 2 uniformed investigators entered, faces unreadable, tablets in hand. The room fell silent instantly. Captain Elena Ward, the taller one said, you're coming with us. No explanation, no discussion. Elena rose without protest, heart steady despite the sudden weight pressing down on her chest. As she followed them into a smaller adjoining room, she could feel the team's eyes on her back, curious, wary, uncertain. The door shut with a dull thud. Inside, the room was stark. 1 metal chair, 1 table, a single light buzzing overhead. The investigator placed a tablet on the table and turned it toward her. Care to explain this? Elena leaned forward. On the screen were access logs, her clearance ID, timestamps, encrypted file names, technical schematics, ballistics data, submerged firing calculations. Files she recognized. Files she had never accessed outside approved training. These logs are wrong, she said quietly. They came from your credentials, the investigator replied. And that's not all. He swiped to the next screen. JIPA's coordinates, riverbanks, canals, urban waterways. Locations tied to 2 unsolved political assassinations. Elena's breath caught, just barely. I've never been to any of these places. Someone using your access has, the investigator said. And tonight's shooter used a method identical to one you're known for. Elena leaned back, mind racing. Someone was copying her, studying her, framing her with meticulous precision. The investigator watched her closely. Only a handful of people even know that technique exists. Fewer could execute it. Elena met his gaze. Then you should be looking for them. He studied her for a long moment, then stood. Until we sort this out, you're restricted. No weapons, no comms, no field movement. The door opened again. As Elena stepped back into the main room, the silence hit harder than gunfire. Marcus's expression shifted, not triumph, but something colder. Confirmation. Elena placed her rifle on the table, then her sidearm, then her access badge. One by one, the symbols of her authority were stripped away. She felt exposed, reduced, and as she sat back down, a subtle vibration brushed her wrist. Her device lit up for half a second. 1 line of text, no sender, no timestamp. You shouldn't have seen her. Now you're next. Elena deleted the message instantly, face unreadable. But deep inside, the truth settled with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a setup, and someone had been planning it for a very long time. The safe house felt different after midnight. Not quieter, just heavier. Every sound seemed amplified. Boots shifting on concrete, the hum of the generator outside, the distant rattle of wind brushing against metal shutters. Elena Ward sat alone at the far end of the room, hands folded loosely in her lap, eyes unfocused but alert. She had been stripped of her gear, but not of her instincts. Across the room, Marcus Hale leaned against a support pillar, arms crossed, watching her like a puzzle that had finally begun to make sense. He didn't speak to her. He didn't need to. His silence carried accusation more effectively than words. The others avoided her eyes. Lieutenant Aaron Cole tried not to, but failed. Every few minutes, his gaze drifted toward Elena, conflicted, uncertain. He had trusted her judgment in the field. That trust now felt dangerous. Elena felt it all, and she said nothing. That was the part that unsettled them most. Most people defended themselves loudly when cornered. They argued, they pleaded, they panicked. Elena waited. She knew something they didn't. Whoever was framing her wasn't improvising. The evidence was too clean, the timing too precise, the psychological pressure too deliberate. This wasn't about proving guilt. It was about breaking her before the truth surfaced. The door opened again. This time, a woman stepped inside, mid-40s, sharp eyes, posture rigid with authority. She wore a dark jacket with a federal insignia stitched cleanly over the chest. "Captain Ward," she said, "I'm Special Investigator Rachel Moore." Elena rose slowly. "Ma'am?" Rachel gestured toward the smaller room. "We're continuing the interview." Inside, the air felt colder. Rachel placed several printed images on the table, grainy surveillance stills, waterlogged photographs, satellite overlays. Elena studied them silently. "A female sniper," Rachel said, "operating near waterways, 2 confirmed assassinations, 1 attempted tonight." She tapped the images. "Same technique, same signature." Elena lifted her gaze. "You think that's me?" "I think someone wants us to," Rachel replied calmly. Elena stiffened just slightly. Rachel noticed. "You didn't deny it." "Because denial is pointless if you're already convinced," Elena said. "What matters is motive, and I have none." Rachel leaned back. "Someone accessed your training records, your classified drills, your past deployments. They used your method better than anyone else could." Elena's jaw tightened. "Then you're looking for someone who knows me well." Rachel's eyes sharpened. "Exactly." She slid one last image across the table. A hand-drawn diagram. Submerged firing angles, current drift calculations, escape routes marked in clean, disciplined strokes. Elena's breath slowed. It looked like her work, but it wasn't. The pressure of the pen was wrong, the spacing too deliberate, the flow forced, not instinctive. "A copy," Elena said quietly, "not an original." Rachel watched her closely. "How can you tell?" "Because whoever drew this understands the mechanics," Elena replied, "but not the mindset. They're replicating results, not intuition." Rachel said nothing. Finally, she stood. "Until we know more, you remain restricted. Don't attempt contact. Don't leave the compound." As the door closed behind her, Elena exhaled slowly. She was running out of time. Back in the main room, the team had settled into uneasy routines, some cleaning weapons, others pretending to sleep. Marcus watched her return. His expression unreadable. Then he spoke, voice low. "You always did like water," he said. Elena stopped. Slowly, she turned toward him. "Excuse me?" Marcus shrugged. "During training, you'd disappear near rivers, canals, puddles even, studying reflections like they were telling you secrets." A chill slid down Elena's spine. "How do you know that?" she asked. Marcus smiled faintly. "I pay attention." That was the moment it clicked. The message, the evidence, the perfectly timed doubt. The enemy wasn't watching from afar. He was standing right in front of her. Elena met Marcus's gaze, calm masking the storm beneath. She didn't accuse him. Not yet. Because now she knew the truth. And she needed proof. Morning came without light. The sky beyond the narrow windows remained a dull gray, as if dawn itself hesitated to enter the safe house. Elena Ward sat at the metal table where she had spent the night, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of cold coffee she hadn't touched. Sleep had never come. Across the room, the unit moved with forced normalcy. Quiet conversations, mechanical routines, but the invisible distance around Elena had grown wider. No one stood near her anymore. No one asked questions. She was no longer one of them. At precisely 600, the investigators returned. This time they weren't alone. Marcus Hale followed them in. Elena felt it before she saw it, the shift in air, the tension tightening like a drawn wire. Marcus didn't look at her as a teammate now. He looked at her as a solved equation. Special Investigator Rachel Moore gestured toward the table. "Captain Ward, we've completed an initial review." Elena set the mug down carefully, and Rachel placed a sealed evidence folder on the table and opened it. Inside were more logs, more fabricated access records, weapon schematics time-stamped during Elena's off-duty hours, surveillance footage placing her near restricted waterways. All false, all perfect. "We're recommending temporary detention pending formal charges," Rachel said. "You will be escorted to a holding facility within the hour." The room went silent. Lieutenant Aaron Cole took a half-step forward. "Ma'am, with respect, this doesn't make sense. She saved us." Rachel turned to him. "Heroics don't erase patterns, Lieutenant." Marcus spoke then, voice smooth. "I tried to warn you all." Elena turned toward him slowly. Marcus met her eyes. There was no guilt there, only resolve. "She's always been different," he continued. "Detached, watching instead of participating. And now we know why." "That's a lie," Cole snapped. Marcus shrugged. "Is it?" She recognized the technique instantly. She knew where the shooter would surface, and she reacted when we described the silhouette. Elena said nothing. Defending herself now would only feed the narrative. Rachel closed the folder. Captain Ward, surrender your wrist device. Elena slid it across the table without hesitation. The small motion felt heavier than removing her weapon. This device carried years of missions, records, fragments of the person she had built through discipline and sacrifice. Rachel nodded to the guards. As they stepped forward, something inside Elena hardened, not fear, not anger, but clarity. This was what her enemy wanted. Isolation, public disgrace, removal from the board. As her wrists were secured, Marcus leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. You should have stayed quiet by the river. Elena met his gaze calmly. You should have picked someone weaker. For the first time, his smile faltered. She was escorted out of the room, past the men she had trusted with her life. Some looked away. Some watched with curiosity. Only Cole held her gaze, regret etched into his face. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Elena nodded once. Don't be. The holding room was smaller than the interview room. No windows, no chair. Just a bench bolted to the wall and a single camera blinking red. The door shut. Alone at last. Elena closed her eyes and let the silence settle. She replayed every detail, every glance, every word Marcus had chosen too carefully. He hadn't just framed her. He had planned her removal. And that meant one thing. Something bigger was coming. Her eyes snapped open. She stood, stepping toward the camera, and spoke clearly, deliberately, knowing someone was listening. You missed one thing, she said softly. She lifted her sleeve, revealing faint markings along her forearm, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Old training etches. A forgotten fail-safe. An emergency signal embedded years ago, off the books, untraceable. A promise between mentor and student. Elena pressed her thumb against the skin. The vibration was subtle. Confirmation. She leaned back against the wall as the signal went out into the world. If her enemy thought she was finished, he had made his final mistake. Because help was coming. And when it arrived, the truth would surface. Just like the river never stayed silent for long. The holding room door opened without warning. Elena Ward didn't move. She remained seated on the narrow bench, posture relaxed, eyes steady. Exactly as she had trained herself to be when control was stripped away. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. Footsteps crossed the concrete floor. Slow, measured, familiar. She looked up. The man standing in the doorway was older than she remembered, his hair now streaked with gray, his face etched with lines that came from decades of wind, water, and war, but his eyes were unchanged, sharp, assessing, impossible to fool. For the first time since the ambush, Elena allowed herself a breath. You came, she said. He inclined his head slightly. You used the signal. They escorted her out without explanation. The guards didn't meet her eyes. The cameras were suddenly very interested in the ceiling. Whatever orders had come down the chain, they had come fast. In the main briefing room, the atmosphere had shifted. Marcus Hale stood near the far wall, arms folded, confidence still in place, but strained now, like armor with a crack running through it. Lieutenant Cole sat rigidly at the table, eyes flicking between Elena and the man beside her. The investigators entered last. Rachel Moore stopped mid-step when she saw him. Her composure slipped, just a fraction. I wasn't informed you'd be involved, she said carefully. That's because no one informed you, the man replied calmly. They informed me. He placed a worn folder on the table and slid it forward. Inside were documents Elena recognized instantly. Training certifications that officially didn't exist, handwritten notes, declassified fragments never meant to surface. And before you ask, he continued, yes, I trained her, and no, she's not your assassin. Rachel picked up the folder, scanning rapidly. This technique, this method, only 2 people ever mastered it. Correct, he said, and only one of us is sitting in restraints. The room fell silent. Marcus shifted his weight. The man turned his gaze toward him. You've always been observant, Marcus. That's why this is disappointing. Marcus laughed softly. You're protecting your student. No, the man replied. I'm correcting your mistake. He tapped a page in the folder. The firing diagrams used in the recent assassinations weren't hers. The spacing is wrong. The drift compensation is overcorrected. That's not intuition. That's calculation without experience. Rachel looked up sharply. You're saying the shooter is an imitator. I'm saying the shooter studied Elena, he said, and someone close gave them access. All eyes turned. Marcus stiffened. That's a serious accusation. So is murder, the man replied evenly. He reached into his coat and produced a small device, placing it on the table. Recovered from a relay point 3 kilometers upriver. Rachel leaned forward. A transmitter. Yes, he said, configured for remote firing, linked to a secondary operator on land. Marcus's jaw tightened. This is circumstantial. Then let's remove the circumstances, the man said. He pressed a button. Audio filled the room. Marcus's voice, clear, unmistakable. She shouldn't have noticed the water. Now we need to accelerate. Silence crashed down like a wave. Marcus stared at the device, color draining from his face. Elena watched him carefully. There it was. Not anger. Fear. Rachel stood slowly. Marcus Hale, you are relieved of duty pending arrest. Marcus backed away a step. You don't understand. This was bigger than her. Bigger than all of us. Elena spoke for the first time. Then you should have trusted me. Marcus laughed bitterly. You were never supposed to survive the doubt. The guards moved in. As Marcus was restrained, Lieutenant Cole exhaled shakily, as if he'd been holding his breath for hours. He looked at Elena. I should have listened. Elena met his gaze. Next time, do. The man beside her turned slightly. We're not finished. Elena nodded. Because even as one enemy fell, she knew the truth. Marcus hadn't acted alone. And the river. The river was about to speak again. The river was waiting for her. Elena Ward stood at the edge of the embankment as dawn bled slowly into the sky, painting the water in muted shades of steel and ash. The current moved gently now, deceptive in its calm, as if nothing terrible had ever hidden beneath its surface. But Elena knew better. She always had. Behind her, the operation unfolded in silence. Security teams taking positions, drones lifting into the air, command channels buzzing with restrained urgency. The stadium beyond the river was already filling with early arrivals for the ceremony scheduled at noon. A perfect target. They're still active, Elena said quietly, eyes fixed on the water. The man beside her nodded. There's one operator left, and they're counting on you not being here. Elena stripped off her outer gear, moving with practiced efficiency. No dramatics, no hesitation, just intention. She stepped into the river. The cold bit instantly, seeping through her clothes, tightening her muscles. She welcomed it. The water sharpened her senses, silenced the noise of doubt that had followed her for days. She submerged herself completely. Below the surface, the world transformed. Sound became distant, light fractured, the current spoke in subtle pressures against her skin. Elena slowed her breathing, matching it to the river's rhythm, letting instinct guide what logic never could. There. A disturbance, artificial, anchored, mechanical. She swam closer, careful not to disrupt the surface above. The outline emerged, a submerged firing system, tethered to weighted cables, angled toward the ceremonial platform across the river. Ingenious. And deadly. Elena reached the device, fingers working quickly despite the burn in her lungs. The locking mechanism was sophisticated, adapted from her own training manuals. A stolen evolution. She twisted the first latch. Above the water, chaos erupted. A shout, running footsteps, a gunshot. Elena felt the vibration travel through the river. She didn't look back. She tore the second cable free just as her lungs screamed for air. Breaking the surface, she gasped, hauling the device toward the embankment. Floodlights snapped on instantly, blinding her. Shouts echoed. Hands up! Red dots danced across her chest. Weapons raised. For a brief moment, the world saw exactly what her enemy wanted them to see. Elena Ward, emerging from the river, holding an assassination device. She froze. Then she made a choice. Elena released the weapon. It sank back into the water with a dull splash. She raised both hands slowly and dropped to her knees on the muddy bank. I'm not your threat, she shouted, voice raw but clear. The shooter is on land, press box level, north side. Behind the scenes, the truth caught up to the lie. A voice cut through the comms. We have the second operator in custody. Another voice followed. Target secured, device disabled. The red dots vanished. Weapons lowered. Silence fell, thick, stunned, reverent. Elena remained kneeling, soaked and shaking, until someone finally stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. It's over, they said. Hours later, as the sun climbed higher, Elena stood once more by the river, dry, cleared, restored in name if not yet in spirit. Lieutenant Cole joined her. They're calling you a hero. Elena watched the water ripple gently. They always do, after. Cole nodded. I should have trusted you from the start. Yeah, she said simply. The man who had trained her approached, hands in his coat pockets. You did well. You taught me to listen, Elena replied. Most people never do. He smiled faintly. The river doesn't lie. People do. As they turned away, the water flowed on, unchanged, unbothered by the truth it had carried. Elena took one last look. Some warriors never fire the most important shot. They make the harder choice instead. To stand still, to tell the truth, and to trust that eventually the truth will rise, just like the river always does.